Hi, everybody. Okay, today it's very special. Egan and ChatGPT walk into a bar, have a new title. What do we call it? Nothing is boring. Instead of doing what we have been doing, which is purposing this specifically for making lesson plans and what have you, we're going to try something conceptually simpler, which is really the first piece of what we've been doing anyway, which is just the diving in and finding something terrifyingly boring to be terrifyingly meaningful. The notion of what we're doing with this is that using ChatGPT, nothing more than ChatGPT and Kieran Egan's cognitive tools, we can do this. This is how I research stuff, and I can help you do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the chat on. What I want you to do, because today is all about history, just start dumping out all of the most boring history topics that you yourself have ever had to think about before. Go dump, 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 dump. We need to pick one within 4 minutes from now, and then we will have the next 50 minutes in order for me to go into this. Hurry, 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 hurry! Nobody's put any in yet. Thank you very much. If you can make sure to chat not to a host and panelists, but to everyone, that helps us out a lot. But the Biafra Civil War in Nigeria, I don't know about that at all. That is great. My goodness. Miss Kisa says, that's hard. I've always liked history. I have a degree in history. I love history. This is especially hard for me, which is why I think the idea of the Civil War is really good for this. So I'm just going to write this down. Biafra Civil War. This is option number 1 for this. Oh, the lesser known dynasties in China. I love it. Can we make this more, well, I mean, no, actually, we can make it general. To Chinese history has always been a major problem for me. A terrible, terrible problem for me. Lesser known dynasties. Dynasties are like ruling families. Histories of ruling families. Dynasties in China. Oh, man. You know, this has actually reminded me of something that I think we should actually bring up. Brynja says, I have an ancient Asia thing I've put out together for my homeschoolers, all the China and Japan. But that's not, give us ideas. Use your expertise in this to find the most boring thing possible. The Romans. How often do you think of the Roman Empire? I do all the time. Russian history is depressing. Does that count? I mean, the title of this now is Nothing is Boring, not Nothing is Depressing. I'm going to say it probably shouldn't count, honestly, because the way that we would Eganize something really depressing, think even something more specifically depressing than just Russian history in general, would be to bring out some of the depressing elements in it. We evolved these emotions these reactions of depression, right, in order for evolutionary purposes. And we're going to use those potentially. So I would say that no, because our job should not be to make it happy and skippy and yay, yay, yay. Our job should be to Eganize it, which means bringing out its full humanity. I mean, not its full humanity, then people would be dying. The creation and failure of Beanie Babies. Rise and fall of Beanie Babies. I got to tell you, that sounds so interesting. I feel like there are probably a lot of documentaries or whatever about that. I think this is a terrible idea. I think it's a horrible idea for this. Mansu Musa is not boring. Is he part of the Nigerian Civil War? I feel like I've heard of him before in some really brutal and terrible things, if I'm remembering him. Richest man ever. Oh, is he? I'm just totally misremembering this. Ooh, history of the U.S. tax code. Oh, okay, that strikes near and dear at my heart because I cannot do taxes. Taxes are too boring for my ADHD brain to do. My wife does all the taxes, and she loves me very much, and that is how I know it. Okay, anything I'm missing right here? Oromia is a separatist region of Ethiopia. The Mali Empire. Here, which of those do you want to focus on? I'm gonna stick with the Biafra Civil War, assuming that has something to do with Africa, which I don't even know. My gosh, I know nothing about the world. Okay, it is now 8:05 my time, so we are obligated to pick one of these. History of street line painters. You know that's going to be interesting, Sabo. You just don't stop playing with this. Okay, let's pick one among these top 5. Okay, I want you to pick your top 2 right now. Go ahead and list your top 2. I will give you 20 seconds to do it. I'll put a mark next to each of them for this. 5 and 4. Sorry, I'm blocking the star there. Kala, you voted for 3. I'm going to do 2 and 1. The ones you did in order. Ellie says 5, just 1 vote. I'll double count your 5, just FYI. Rainbow Sabo says 4 and 5. Brynja says 5. Oh, man. Ellie says 2. Oh, I see. So then I shouldn't have... Whatever. 1 and 3. If it comes down to it, I'll take one of the 5s away. 3. 1 and 5. 2 and 4. We are really not in alignment here. 5 and 2. 5. 5 and 2. It's obviously 5, the U.S. tax code. Okay, fantastic. Let's do this. I just got a new iPad, so I should have had a thing with this. I'm just seeing right now that Brandon Hendrickson is connecting to audio. Who is signing in as myself? That is, I don't even know what's going on. Brandon Hendrickson did not connect to audio. Brandon Hendrickson has just signed out. So ghosts are real, is what we're figuring out with this. That's neat. Okay, so what I should do is I should go to where I have the most recent version of, come on, computer, you can do it. Lost tools. I'm going to go to where I have pattern language book review. I want to do, I think it's in here is where I took the picture of these and put these together. Here, I'll break this into here. Sorry, I should have this prepared, and I do on the old iPad. Okay. I want to go back and forth to here to look at Egan's tools that we've written down. Egan never put all of his tools in one place before, and so never made one authoritative list of them. So right now I'm going to go through these, and I'm just going to kind of note some things that I think are useful to maybe look at for this. So I'm thinking about the history of the U.S. tax code. Oh my gosh, it's so great. I'm going to be looking for things that are strange with this. I'm not happy with how I did that. This will be better. I'm going to be looking for the quest for truth. I don't know if that'll be relevant for us. The great mystery, ambiguities might be interesting. Battling ideas. Wouldn't that be interesting to actually see if, like, in the history of the tax code, like, there are like a war of ideas of like how the whole thing will go. I do want to see if there are any heroes with this. I'm interested in like knowing like the gossip, like the tea on how like some of these things are. I might be interested in like personifying the tax code and like seeing like what kind of person would it be. Senses are not going to be relevant here in number sense. For the kind of like level of this that we're going to be going through, numbers are not usually going to be relevant for this. But like if I were to go really into this, my gosh, the numbers would be so useful for this. Spotting patterns, seeing opposites. I don't care about patterns right now. I don't care about the binary opposites for this. Maybe if there's a war, there's a fight about this. Limits. I'm interested. Oh, this is interesting. One of the limits of taxation in general, you can think about how the U.S. tax code is actually kind of put in, like, it is a story inside of a larger history of taxation. And like, how much can you tax your population, and why do you tax your population? Like, where will they actually, where are the limits? Where will they revolt against you? It's like, where does the U.S. government, who I'm just going to assume right now is going to be like, money, 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 money. I'm very open to the idea that, like, actually, it's like, let's do the most good and like not take very much money at all. Maybe that's true too. But like, where are the limits of how much money it can take? I'm really, really interested right now in like what is the highest that the U.S. tax code has ever allowed taxes to be? I think I know the answer to that. I think it was right after World War II. But like was it like a 99%, right? Like what for like a certain tax income, tax bracket? What is the deal with that? How about like in general? Like, what is the most has been there? What's the least that is ever taxed? Like, what's the limit on that? And like, in order to run a government, I'm going to guess it's actually before the Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, which is like American Democracy 1.0, which failed. There was an America. There was the United States of America, which failed. It died. And then we made the Constitution. Finicky definitions I do not care about right now with with this. Reduction in processes, quantification of everything. I'm interested maybe in a mental image, and this kind of comes into a number sense, of if I imagine like the U.S. tax code written out, printed onto paper, how big would it be? Part of my, what I'm thinking of for, I don't know, the quality that I feel, the essence that I feel of tax code is that it is confusing and it is long. So I'm interested in how big it would be. And if I imagine that, how big that would be. Socratic dialogue. It might be interesting to get ChatGPT to do this. Okay. Radical doubt, paradoxes, thought experiments. I doubt it. Simulations and experiments. Games, no. Sci-fi, fantasy. Free play, imitation, nonsense. I doubt it. Let me just look at this also right on here. Narrative dance. Shall we make a narrative dance about the U.S. tax code? Symbol stories. I am interested. Like, if you had to like summarize the entire history of it, like in a couple sentences, what would it be? Complex stories, meta narratives, names, lists, and I'm interested in the names of. I feel like there's something to do with that we could use. Lists and collections, concepts and taxonomies, maybe. Bizarre details, because the strange kind of gave us that before. Jokes, it might be interesting to pick its brain, ChatGPT's brain, about jokes. Making and breaking rhythms, anomalies, questioning everything. Okay, great. Sorry, what did I just do? I just reminded myself, like, what are these tools that we're going to be using for this? Because the trouble is, people go into using ChatGPT and all they do is they ask for factual information, which can be great. It can be really, really great. And, it does a pretty good job with that. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. But what we want to do is make it human for us. And the tax code is the least human thing that I know about. I'm so happy we picked this. Okay, so let's just dive into this. Can we make a nursery rhyme about it? Maybe, but we want to first make it meaningful, right? So let's go to our ChatGPT screen. This is our new ChatGPT screen. I'm going to try to type this in here, and we're going to see how well we can see this. If not, we can blow it up. I have this a bit bigger because I want to use the simplest model, and you can't even see it right now. Okay, whatever. We will do this. Okay, so which of these tools do I want to start with? How about this? We'll start with story, because I like starting with story. Act as a really great storyteller who tells stories to people as simple as children. Please tell me the story of the U.S. tax code from its inception to the present day. Please pattern the story around a pair of binary emotional opposites. Please tell this story in a way that is so epic that it will not fail to make me cry. Make it only a few paragraphs long, though. Good luck. Okay, let's try this. I think you can't read this, but maybe you'll be able to read this. How well can you read that right now? Give me like a yes or no. I say yes, I say yes. No, as you see, no. Here, so I will make this bigger. Give me just a second. I hope you can see this. Once there was a country born from freedom's fire, a place where hope and fear danced as one. In the early days, America's heart was light, and its citizens, like children, believed in the beauty of their land. There was no taxes on their dreams, only wide horizons. That's a lame line. But as the nation grew, so did its needs. The year was 1861, and war, bitter, terrible war, drove leaders to summon the first income tax. They promised it was only a fleeting shadow, a necessity born of sorrow. Okay, so note right now that ChatGPT is not focusing on all taxes, but on income taxes. I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't really understand what all the different types of taxes are, and that itself might be something that we want to ask ChatGPT. That would kind of be a list, right? So maybe we want a list of different taxes. So put a little pin in that. But shadows linger. After the Civil War, taxes appeared, and for a moment, hope surged again. Yet the industrial age dawned, and with it came new complexities, new divides between rich and poor. In 1913, the 16th Amendment carved into the nation's soul, making income tax a permanent mark on everyday life. It promised fairness, but fairness is fragile. Some found safety in the code structure, while others found only confusion and burden. The decades rolled on, wars raged, depressions loomed, and the tax code twisted itself into knots, ever growing, ever evolving. It became a beast of contractions, a tool of prosperity, and a weapon of despair. For every deduction that lifted one, there was a loophole that crushed another. Simplicity gave way to complexity, and clarity to bewilderment. Now, in this present day, the tax code is a labyrinth, both loved and loathed. It stands as a monument to the eternal push and pull between hope and fear, hope that through it a better world might be built, and fear that it might forever strangle the dreams of the people. A couple other things that I'm noting here. First of all, that was awesome, right? Like, I already care a little bit more about this than I did before. And honestly, I feel like, how much did you learn? 0 to 10. How much did you actually think you learned about the tax code or the history of the tax code right there? I feel like I actually didn't learn that much, but I knew a little bit. I have a degree in American history, right? And like the whole idea of it's making it like more complicated. That is already something that I feel too much. So I feel like it did not actually add very much there. Know that most people are saying like pretty close to 0 for this. There's not that much that most of us just learned from there. Okay, great. So let's get, feel free to ask questions about this. Sabal suggested, we asked it to tell us the story, but from the British people's point of view. That's going to focus only on I think that you're totally right to think about different points of view, right? In fact, I'm even thinking about how meta-narratives, right, which are, among other things, the way that you can think about that word, competing definitions for what is good and what the story of things are. So maybe, though, instead of thinking about it from the British perspective, because I think the honest perspective of most British people is we don't care what is going on with the U.S. tax code. We could not care less about that. We did take two perspectives inside of America and take a look at those. I want to first, though, do that list thing. Okay, so I want to focus on lists. Note that lists, you'd think they're so boring. As tools go, nothing is more dull than just a list of things. And yet, lists allow you to just give them the names of a bunch of things. That gives you a sense that maybe this is all the things that there are, at least all the main ones. It kind of rockets you to the sense of fullness, completion of knowledge about something. So give me a high-level comprehensive list of all of the different types of taxes in the U.S. tax code, where, for example, the income tax might be one. Wow, these are so boring. Oh my gosh, I'm just dying. I'm dying right now. I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. This feels like every time that I've ever tried to learn about the tax code before. Okay, so how can we Eganize this? Any ideas? Please don't die. I'll try my best. How about metaphors? These are very, I'm sure that, syntaxes. I'll admit that sin tax does sound really interesting, right? Taxes on goods like tobacco, alcohol, and gambling. Okay, first of all, there are too many of these things, right? And even like one of these things will have like all of these different things. So it's too much. This is too much at once. So we need to find a way of reducing this. But we also want a way of making these things interesting. Metaphors might be the thing to go for here. Also names, interesting names for this. So here's what I want to try. I'm just thinking about this. Give me a simpler list with fewer things in it that is similarly comprehensive. So make it more high level, please. But also, as the primary name for these types of taxes, instead of their official name, for example, property tax, give me a metaphorical, really evocative name that captures the essence of what is going on with that kind of title, with that kind of tax. A name that might sear itself into my memory and immediately give me a real purchase on what is going on in the tax code. Just look at how fast this is. Okay. Wage harvest. Oh, I see. The harvest is kind of the new thing there. Income tax. A portion of every paycheck is reaped to fund the common good. I'm suddenly reminded of the TV show Parks and Rec, where Ron Swanson talks about. Sorry, he's libertarian and it's hilarious. And okay, sorry. Already, wage harvest has actually tapped into, for me, some more emotions than I had before. Oops, sorry, I have to scroll up. The workers' toll, payroll taxes, a toll on your labor to support these things. I've never understood why these are not just the same thing before. That's actually an open question. I probably don't want to learn about that right now, but I might. Profit share, corporate tax. Businesses must share part of their earnings to contribute to national infrastructure. Really? It's specifically for national infrastructure. Huh. Point out that like even right now, the fact that it says some interesting things on there, like it's causing me to read this more easily. I'm interested in reading this. Whereas before, my eyes could not even focus on this. I am so ADHD and this is so dull for me. Legacy claim, estate and gift tax. When wealth passes from one generation to the next, government takes its claim on the legacy. Everyday cut, sales tax. A slice of every purchase is taken from the milk in your fridge to the clothes in your back. Landlord's due, property tax. If you own property, you must pay tribute to the privilege of your land. Luxury bite, excise and sin taxes. Excise means to cut out, excise a tumor. A tax on indulgence for things that tempt. Alcohol, cigarettes, lavish goods. Windfall taxes. Capital gains tax when you invest, or aka the death tax, right? If you've heard about this, Republicans in the United States in the 90s, early aughts, rebranded capital gains tax as the death tax, which is this really clever way of rechristening it, rebaptizing it, renaming it. Christening and baptism are different rites of the Catholic Church. That maybe you'll feel differently about this. Okay, so that itself is also interesting to me about how these names can be used in different ways from different perspectives to get at this. I know what the next step is in this. And then the air we breathe tax, environmental tax, a price on pollution to remind us that the earth resources are not infinite. Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to combine together these different perspectives. I want the different perspectives to be, honestly, it can just be as simple as people who are in favor of the tax versus people who are not in favor of it. People who are not in favor of it are always going to be libertarians, are almost always going to be libertarians. And people who are in favor of it are not always going to be socialists because in socialism there are debates between, let's actually use ChatGPT for this. I'd like to pick two different perspectives. One which is generally in favor of lots of the taxes that currently exist on the United States tax code, and another perspective which is usually against these taxes existing or being as large as they are. Help me really briefly come up with some ideas for what these different perspectives might be. Isn't it great at speech recognition? I'm used to these being terrible. No, this did something different. I didn't want this. No, I mean, name a side that will be generally pro-tax and name another side that will be generally anti-tax. For example, one anti-tax perspective might be libertarianism, but please list others if you think there are others. Progressivism, social democracy, modern liberalism. Against libertarianism, conservatism, and in anarcho-capitalism. I like that it did the anarcho-capitalism sense. That's a left-wing perspective on this. Okay, so I'm going to do social democracy. No, I'm going to dive into the actual political fight of this for a second. I almost did something dumb. I was like, well, this is going to get too political. I don't want to get too political. Yes, I do. I want to care about this. Now, I could, for different contexts, say that maybe I don't want to, but I'm just going to dive in because, my goodness, life is short. Okay, so progressivism. You know, I suddenly realized that ain't nobody is using this part of it. I want to give it like this. Okay. Let me know if you need me to scroll up at some point, but I'm going to make it easier for you to read this. Okay. So now that I've picked progressivism and libertarianism, what I want to do is get it to come up with a name, a metaphor and a name for each of those major types of taxes from each of those perspectives. And I'm going to want it to put it in a table. Technically, tables are an Egan tool, but they're really not very interesting, so we rarely put them down on there. But they're actually very useful for ChatGPT. Note that what I'm really leaning into here where are fights in here? Oh, battling ideas. I did not see this coming, so this is kind of fun. Go ahead and take progressivism as one of the combatants and libertarianism as another combatant. For each of those, come up with a basic metaphor that each might see these different types of taxes as. Make a table where the columns are progressivism and libertarianism, and the rows are these different kinds of taxes. And give me in the cells the different metaphors or titles or names that each of these sides might take. Let's see. What time is it? Well, it's only half after. We're doing great. Let's see how well the table works in here. I've been having some problems with the tables. Oh, this looks pretty good. Yeah. I'm reminded of the book Don't Think of an Elephant. Do you guys know that book? It doesn't really matter right now, but one of the greatest books on metaphor use that's ever been written was written by a cognitive psychologist. What's his name? I'm forgetting it right now. That's funny. Where somebody put it in the chat if they know, where he takes his ideas of like how all thinking is really deeply metaphorical thinking, and he applies it to politics. And he's a Democrat, and he argued that like when people think about the Democratic Party, the classic element or the classic symbol of the Democratic Party is an elephant. It's like, no, that's a wrong metaphor. If that's a metaphor, it's a useless metaphor. We want to use our metaphors like weapons to get people to think about things the way that we want them to think about things. Now that sounds really controlling and awful. He would say to see the thing as we want them to see the thing, as we see the thing. Brilliant book. His other books on this have been even better. Philosophy in the Flesh is another one of his. George Lakoff, that's his name. I want to go to here. Okay, so let's look at this. Income tax. Fair share foundation versus wage theft. I'm going to skip around. sometimes it helps read things from the bottom. Environmental taxes. Economic handcuffs. Oh, that's so good! Versus planet. This is obvious, right? I mean, I don't know. I like the environment, right? Like this comes obvious to me. My so good there is just like, oh man, like this is exactly what economic libertarians, I mean, we should say libertarians, what they hate about it is because it ends up being a burden on making businesses. Because you can't do anything until like you prove that like you're positive that you won't hurt any microorganisms that haven't yet haven't been discovered. If that sounds extreme, there really are some situations where there have been extreme things that have been used and have been stifled business. But also maybe an easier way if you're like, what? That's terrible. Watch the movie Ghostbusters. The theme of the movie Ghostbusters is that the Environmental Protection Agency is evil and gets in the way of business. Sin taxes, health and welfare guardrail versus a lifestyle penalty. You don't want the government telling you how to live. Property taxes, community builders, a way to invest in local infrastructure and schools. Homeowner ransom, an unjust fee on property ownership, forcing people to pay to live on their own land. Oh man, I feel so pulled toward all of these things. Sales tax, everyday contribution. Invisible pickpocket. It's just like the tax that you never think about. Death tax, a moral outrage, taxing someone's life savings after death is seen as confiscatory and wrong. Versus the inheritor balance, prevents the entrenchment of wealth inequality across generations by redistributing excess. Capital gains, this is what, for, what's the word? This is for like stocks and things like that, right? It's a tax on success that discourages wealth building. Wow. For some of these, the libertarian side comes so much more easily to me, and for some of these, the progressive side comes so much more easily to me. I am discovering myself a bit better right now, which is this underexplored aspect of Egan education. That the whole idea of, I don't know, a deep idea of Egan is that when you only learn about yourself by actually getting out into the world and learning about the world, and if you learn about the world properly, you will always be learning about yourself. Corporate tax, payroll taxes, forced charity. That's interesting. Oh, yeah. I follow some libertarians online who talk about that. Fair Share Foundation. We talked about that one. Okay, how much now do you feel like you have now that you better understand the U.S. tax system? Rainbow Sable says, this is so interesting. I know. I'm feeling this right now. It is still a list. Yeah. Lists are good. Lists are better than you think that they're going to be. Maybe you should have AI make this video. AI, it is interesting to look into how much AI, like ChatGPT, actually does implicitly understand Egan's tools. Way better than I would have thought. But I don't think it would come up with this very well. All right, so already we are like the lowest number is 3. And the highest number is 10. Before the highest number was 3, I think. And whatever else is like around 0. Okay, great. But this is helpful. Thank you, Brynja. Not mentally nor emotionally snagged into it as of yet. Okay. Where should we go from here? History is what we said, right? Not social studies, but history. So we want to actually get the idea of a narrative in here. I actually am interested in quantification now. I said I wouldn't be. But I feel like in this we've gone to like these kind of human elements of how people might fight about these things. But I want some sense of just like how much taxes have gone on throughout U.S. history. Okay, I think I'm ready for this. Act as an expert in the history of taxation. Please estimate for every decade going back to the 1770s, the percent of a person's earnings that would have been taxed by the government. Please lump together taxes that go to local, state, federal, etc. governments. Don't distinguish between those. Please, insofar as it's possible, also add in the taxes that people end up paying even when they're corporate taxes, if that's even a relevant economic thing. Again, please express this as a percent of people's income. Give this to me as a simple list. So much beautiful tea lost. And now there's a really interesting question as to how correct this is. You know, it's actually pretty easy to check direct facts on ChatGPT. One trick, for example, is you just say, please give me some references for this. And then you click the references and you check them and you see if they actually say that or not. And you see like what sources are they pulling from. You know, you can ask it to check the source. Oh, I've never actually done that before. I have a pretty good taste in sources at this point in my life. We should do that at some point. The kind of information, however, that we are getting right now is famously hard to actually quantify. People argue about what should and should not be counted in this. So I don't know that fact-checking a detail is going to be useful to figure out if this is correct or not. And actually, I do feel like we are at the point of this where maybe this could be really wrong. Like maybe this could be, sorry, if it's wrong, it's important for us. So I'm just trying to think. I'm going to try something dumb. Take a look at this. Whoops. I noticed that you were actually pretty significantly off in a couple of the numbers that you said there. Please check to see if you got anything wrong. And when you find those, please tell me exactly what you said versus what the real numbers were. This works sometimes. Okay, so this is interesting. Whoop, I said 5 to 10, but what I really meant was 5 to 7. Okay, that's the same number. Now this, I'd actually wondered about this. I said 20 to 25, but sometimes the effective one was for top earners like this much. But for average Americans, okay, that's still actually higher than that. Okay. The marginal tax and the top income was, I think, 99%. I can recommend some good books about this. 25 to 30. Okay, so it actually might have been saying it too low. Okay, interesting. Okay. Now you might think, are those right? And maybe you'd go more deeply into that, asking for specific references. We don't have much time, so I'm going to skip that step right now, just because you would know how to do that. I'll just progress as if I kind of assume this. One thing I do actually want for this is an image. An underappreciated Egan tool is graphs. They're not that exciting, but they can be good. So let's just throw into this. Please make a really cool graph that awesomely visualizes all of this stuff. Thank you, ChatGPT, for being merciful and not mocking me when I say things like that. Wrong button. I think this should, just a second. I think this should do it. Yeah, there we go. Would you have predicted this? I should have maybe even asked us to try to draw that ahead of time. I'm gonna tell you, I am by no means an anti-tax activist. This makes me feel something. This makes me more interested in this and makes me want. It makes me want to know more about this. This feels bad to me. I feel like I don't like this. This is interesting now. Now we actually really are into the history of this, right? Okay. How much do you feel like you've learned about the U.S. tax code throughout history right now? 0 to 10? This is all together. This is all together at this point. World War II did seem to be the big tax trigger right there. From about 14 to about 35. That's a huge difference. It would be interesting to look at, it'd be interesting to look at why. Maybe that's what we want to zoom into right now, right? Because it seems like if we focus on any moment in this history, it probably should be that moment. It would be interesting also to think about, like, what's the road not taken? Like, imagine that there's an alternate history where it stayed low or went down or whatever, went back. I mean, because even at that moment, right, in 1930. Note also that, like, sorry, we said World War II, but maybe it's not World War II. This is also where the Great Depression happens, right? The Great Depression hits in 29. Oops. So, like, maybe it's like government spending through those programs. I don't know. This is actually interesting. But then it could have gone back down to this. What would America be different? Sorry to be so American focused in this. No, I'm not. You picked this. You voted on this. This is your fault. Brynja, you've only learned 2 out of 10 of new things. Are you a tax attorney? What is your background in this? There's a book about how World War II still affects your life. I do not know about this book. I'd be interested in this. Throw it into the blog post or here if you'd like. But if you don't think of it, put it in a blog post. I do our taxes and I like history and I read too much. Okay. It's got pool shark. Okay. All right. What do I want to think about this? Or sorry, where am I thinking about where we should go with this? Black Junebug is hating me right now for not saying anything. I want to zoom in on that one moment. I want to understand the reasons. I want to understand what historians even debate the reasons to be. I want to find more fights in this. I specifically want to have, like, be tempted toward, this was great and this was awful. That's what I want. Because I want this to, kind of be about me. Okay. Back to the grindstone. Camera plus screen. I want you to imagine 2 economic historians. One a progressive, one a libertarian. I want them to argue about what were the causes of the increase in taxation in the 1930s and 40s, when taxation, according to your chart, went up so very much. Please first list what reasons they might each give. There's a reason I'm doing this. If I had gone to a different version of ChatGPT, the more advanced version, I would just ask it to do the thing I want, but I want this middle step first. Progressive one says New Deal programs, economic equality, social safety nets, World War II, infrastructure investments. Libertarian says government overreach. That's a definition, but that's not a reason. Dependency in the states. Oh, that's interesting. New Deal social programs reduce individual responsibility and make people reliant on the state. This is a libertarian talking point. War and excess spending. Yeah, right. Like one of the economists, the libertarian economists who I follow and disagree with sometimes radically, but who I always find puckish and interesting, is also the most anti-war person that I follow. Even World War II. Even the American Revolution. He's an American. Yeah. I actually don't know he's anti-World War II. Anyway, they talk about that. Permanent bureaucracy. I took a class in education about sort of permanent bureaucracies and the dangers there. Crowding at the private sector. Stifling entrepreneurship and innovation. Interesting historical debate here. Okay. You know, what I thought I was going to do was to come up with a debate between them. But I'm seeing that these are 5 topics, 5 reasons each. It would take way too long to really deal with those. So that would take too long for our time right now. Though you could spend a long time kind of going back and forth on this. Let's I'm just going to take one of these, maybe the easiest of them, infrastructure. Because then this person, okay, here. So it seems self-evident to me that you want government to do nice roads, right? I happen to live in a state that has, I think, the nicest roads in the nation. Not bragging, but your state is worse than my state. And I'm interested in what the opposite side of that would be. Okay, so great. Now go ahead and script a debate between those economists, specifically about infrastructure investment. I want you to give the best views on both sides. However, I do want you to make the debate between these two economists to be bloodthirsty, brutal, vital, calling forth the best energies in both of them. These two people, they should not stoop to name-calling, but they should properly and openly express the depths of their views that the other side's beliefs about this topic, if enacted, if continued to be enacted, will make the world a worse place, and that actual human flourishing requires that we have a proper understanding of the role of the U.S. tax code and infrastructure investment. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I wish they actually hadn't named them because I have to think about these. I could almost ask it. I could ask it to do this again without the names, but whatever. This is pretty good. But it's too long. That was beautiful. Now give the whole thing to me again, where they're making the exact same points, but they're being so very much more concise about it. Also, their names are Dr. Libertarian and Dr. Progressive. I'm a busy man. Freedom? Freedom to fail? Freedom to drive on crumbling roads? No. Investment in infrastructure is the foundation of a functioning society. Without it, everything collapses. Your investment is theft. You tax people into submission. Real freedom means people build their own futures without a bureaucratic noose around their necks. And your so-called freedom leaves people in ruin. Infrastructure binds us together. Without it, the nation falls apart. We invest in the common good, or we watch everything break. No, your taxes break people. True human flourishing requires liberty, not a bloated government sucking the life out of innovation and progress. I skipped most of it, right? But each word is a knife in this battle for the future. Liberty versus the common good, with neither side willing to yield. We're out of time. If we had more time, and we don't, do we? Because we started 5 minutes. We have 5 more minutes. Great. Here's what I want to do with the last 5 minutes of this. I want to go into the what the history of the United States could have been like in these people's imaginations if we were to do this. I'm going to do one thing different now. I am going to. If I go like this? Sorry, I'm experimenting with. Yes, I can go to this, and I can go to. I can go to this. See up here that I have these different models. These different models that I can click on, right? So it's already too late. It's already too late because we're too far advanced in this. These ones will do a lot of work for you to basically do research for you as opposed to just reacting to the thing that you have said. But I guess it's too late. Okay, so it doesn't matter. Now, let's do this. I want you to paint a realistic vision of what would have happened from the libertarian perspective if, after World War II, the United States had gone back to having really low taxation. As you come up with this, I want you to express this libertarian and grounded, realistic, counterfactual history. I want you to portray it in a way that economic progressives would still very much appreciate. So instead of being tribal, I want this explanation to be anti-tribal. Are you looking at this? This is interesting. Huh. Wow. Hmm. I'm not saying that everyone should be convinced by this vision. I will say that ChatGPT does a pretty good job of speaking in a way that if you didn't know that these were conservative opinions being expressed in progressive language, I think that most of my progressive friends would think that these were progressive ideas. You could say that, well, maybe these things aren't realistic. Maybe they're not. Maybe they are. Now it would be really interesting to go deeper into this. I was arguing with a friend of mine who's just finishing his master's degree in econ right now about this today. And this avoids the military-industrial complex. Okay. Now, give me exactly Now do the same thing except flip the perspectives. Give me what a progressive might fear would happen if America had gone to a low tax after World War II, but express it in ways that would also worry a libertarian? Wow. Giant corporations begin to dominate not just the economy, but society. This is a point in libertarian philosophical circles. Freedom for what? And also what constitutes governance? Concentration of power moves from government to private boardrooms. Liberty is no longer individual liberty, but the freedom of corporations to set the terms for everyone's lives. This is where people become anarcho-capitalists. Failed in here. Progressives fear the growing chasms between the haves and the have-nots, right? Although there are some libertarians who do care about that. It's interesting that it's failing at this point. Social unrest boils over. My favorite book on economics is Naked Economics by Charles Whelan. And the book does a really good job of striking a middle agreement between opposites. And one of the things he says is that, look, like if you're a libertarian, you can say that we shouldn't have higher taxes. But at some point, if the people revolt, you can't have government. Yeah. Communities fracture. This is good. This is good. Pollution worsens. Face the consequences of a nation that has failed to educate its next generation. True freedom becomes impossible for all. I'm flabbergasted. I didn't think it would be this good. Little meta point here that the fight thing in Egan, right, that you want this conflict here, doesn't just mean talking heads. It can mean talking heads, people fighting each other, and then finding these sort of like ways of expressing their views and other people's perspectives. If we had more time to go on this, I feel like I'd like to take one of these things and say, okay, like what is realistic, right? Like these are these different stories. Now, how do these different sides advocate for their ideas? Could we find actual evidences for these things? This would mean going all philosophic, in Egan terminology wise. This is I never knew that tax codes be so dramatic. What are our questions? First of all, from 0 to 10, how much do you feel like you learned about the tax code? Let me make this. I think I can go like. Here, let me ask that question again. From 0 to 5, how much do you feel like you learned about it? Yes. This is how we did it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first one is learned. Okay, and I will put stars on things. I see 5, 4, 2, 1. 5, 4, 2, 1. Great. Actually, I'll admit that I hoped it would be higher and thought that it would be higher. I feel like I learned a heck of a lot about this. But okay, that's fine. I would say a 5. I would definitely say a 5 for me. Learned, okay. And then how emotional. How well did you get the emotions? Did it grab you by the emotions? Oh, this is from 0 to 5. So 8 is right out, as they say in Monty Python. Oh, poo. I didn't see who had said it before. 4, 1, 5, 3. 4, really? Just 1? 5 and 3. You people are tough with this. Okay, very well, very well. And finally, this is easier. You know, I feel like the one that we have, the next one we have is how much does it feel like this matters to you now? But maybe that's the same thing as emotions. If anyone can come up with a better, um, I want to ask something about ChatGPT. How useful a tool do you find ChatGPT to be now in understanding and being able to use to understand things in a profound and relatively accurate way? That's what I want. Hmm. Miss Kisa, this is well said. I feel like I didn't learn much about the history of the tax code. Where did it come from? Whose fault it is? Whose fault it is? Kind of built into opinion already built into there, right? But I feel interested in learning more about it. Yeah, you're right. The direction that we went with this ended up not focusing so much on the tax code in the granular level, but about like the outward effects of it. I would say though that is what the tax code does. That is sort of what the tax code is. It is the outworking of the tax code. But you're right. It's not about the specifics of taking this deduction or that deduction or whatever. 5, 3, 5, 5, 5. That looks like that. 5. Oops, that's the wrong color and the wrong shape. And what are we even trying to do? 5, 3, 5, 5, 5. Oh, I know what I was trying to do. I was trying to write something down. G, P, T. Just how good is ChatGPT in this? Okay, great. Everyone, what is next week's for this? We will do this again next week. We will do this every week for, I don't know, really quite a while. Please invite people. This is fun to do. And the purpose of this is, frankly, to be kind of an outreach thing for this. I think we have 3 more. Next week will be math. You can take your most boring math thing ever, and we will try to make it amazing. Thanks tremendously much. Bye.